Welcome back to the Morning Joe. Let's bring in right now the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Corker from Tennessee. Senator Corker, yesterday you said something pretty radical by Washington standards. We're still trying to come to terms with it. You said you were going to actually read and study this agreement before passing judgment on it. I don't know where you get these sort of ideas from. We don't, but anyway, 24 hours into it. Your first blush impression of this, reading it as a skeptic, have some of your concerns been taken care of, or are you more skeptical this morning?
Well, look, Joe, I fell asleep last night reading some of the annexes, and you know, the UN Security Council component we'll probably see in the next couple of days, and then on top of that, there'll be a number of classified annexes that really get into a lot of detail relative to inspections. Look, I'm approaching this in a very bipartisan way. The only thing that is bipartisan today is that there are skeptics on both sides. But look, I've earned a reputation here for being a balanced person, and I'm going to make sure that we conduct these hearings in a way that every side is heard equally and in a fair way, and then we'll make our judgment. We've got about 3 weeks prior to August to go through this, but again, some of the concerns that I had yesterday, I still have. I want to hear from the administration, their perspective. And I understand the context within this being negotiated with Russia, obviously wanting to sell them arms, China wanting their oil, the European community wanting to do business with them, and candidly an administration that wanted to build a legacy. But we'll go through this in great detail. We'll make sure that when we vote, everyone fully understands what the deal is. But again, I start out as a skeptic.
Mr. Chairman, let's start. Let me ask you about a concern that we've heard this morning from everybody from Donald Trump on the right to Steve Israel on the left. They both expressed concerns about Iran having too much lead time before inspections were called. Is that a concern of yours? And if there is there any fixing that part of this deal? Yeah.
So I talked yesterday at length with a very respected person in foreign policy about this very issue, and this is a lesser standard than we had in Iraq. There is a 24-day period, but then it's very vague as to how you really get through a conflict, if you will, as it relates to especially trying to get into a military facility or one that's undeclared, if you will. So that's an area where I think there's going to be a lot of discussion and a tremendous amount of focus.
Amending this deal, though, is not an option, is it?
Say again? Well,
amending this deal is not an option, is it?
Now, amending this is not an option, and there are references throughout what we saw yesterday, which again is just the first tranche of information that we'll get. Throughout it, it says that the United States must keep Congress, must keep state and local governments from doing anything that might ostracize Iran. My sense is there'll be discussions. This is a vote of approval or disapproval, but there may be follow-on kinds of things where Congress puts additional conditions in place. So that's something that can be done. Look, that's what we did in the first place. Congress brought Iran to the table. I know Richard Haas referred to that earlier today on your program. So there's a number of things that Congress can do. Again, I don't want to prejudge. I want to go through this in great detail. I want to work with others. And look, this is maybe the most important foreign policy issue we may deal with during my time in the Senate anyway. And I want to make sure we do it in an appropriate way.
Well, you mentioned Richard Haas, and I want to ask you about mindset looking at this, because obviously you have to take a lot more time, and we understand that. He has a Project Syndicate piece out this morning that says, you know, if the deal goes through, it actually could make matters worse, pointing out that there are different ways of looking at this deal. We had Tom Cotton on the show yesterday, who appeared literally seconds after the president spoke, and he said immediately it was a terrible deal, which would lead one to believe that he is going into this looking for ways to hate it. I'm wondering, sir, if your approach is different. Are you looking for circumstances in which you could support this deal?
Well, I don't want to get categorize out in a place that I'm not. I'm at a place where I begin. Look, I think every responsible person here in Congress should begin with a skeptical outlook. I mean, we're dealing with a country that is not trustworthy, a country that has killed directly thousands of Americans. I mean, in Iraq. I mean, these people are not, they're not our friends today. And so, the fact is we need to go through this and look at it in great detail. And we need to decide where we want to be. And so I start out as a skeptic. I'll go through this. Again, that's the only thing that today is bipartisan, is that people on both sides of the aisle have a skeptical outlook. On the other hand, as you go through something like this, certainly people may change their mind. They may be enlightened. They may look at it in a very different way. Look, let me say, yesterday I was on a program and they were talking about some of the people on the right coming out with really strong comments. We've also had people on the left that are gushing with love, okay? So I mean, in any arrangement like this, you're going to have those polls. But I think that certainly as we go through these hearings, people will be enlightened and people will understand the deal and people will look at it in a judicious way. I certainly plan to do that beginning as a skeptic.
Mike.
Senator, listening to your concerns, they're legitimate, they're sensible. Is one of your concerns the idea that without this deal, Iran is free almost immediately to do whatever Iran chooses to do with regard to terrorism, war, killing Americans, or building a nuclear weapon?
There's no question that that's where they are today. I will say, one of the analogies that a respected senator made recently was, look, it looks like the administration may have said, well, look, we don't want a poor country to get a nuclear weapon, meaning they have sanctions against them today. Their economy is not fully functioning. They've got $100 to $150 billion tied up. We'd rather have a rich country get a nuclear weapon. So the other side of this, Mike, is that, let's face it, the constraints come off. Research and development will have been done. Their ballistic missile system will be much stronger. Their economy will be strong. And so what happens at the end of this period? Is it really an 8-year deal? You can look at it as an 8-year deal, or is it a 15-year deal? So look, there are qualitative issues like the one that you just laid out that I'm sure everyone will be looking at.
Senator Bob Corker, thank you very much for being on the show this